When were you aware of both Liverpool and Chelsea's interest?
Well, Chelsea were interested all the way through the summer, Liverpool a bit later. But, we try and do our transfer business as confidentially as possible. We try and respect both the player and the clubs that are bidding. But at the end of the day, our job is to do the best for our club. And that means negotiating as hard as we can when we're in that position.
Yeah, and Liverpool, they were the first to agree, and it was a record fee as well. These are huge figures we're talking about. Talk us through the negotiations for him with Liverpool.
Well, they're tough negotiations. I think when you're dealing at any level of the transfer market, but particularly the top end, everyone is looking to create the best position for themselves. And in our case, we had an asset that was very important to our club, probably one of the best midfield players currently in Europe, potentially one of the best midfield players in the world. We didn't want to lose him. We had him on a long contract, and we were simply looking to make sure that we achieve the best possible price. And that means, as I say, negotiating hard with whichever club comes in for him.
And how quickly then, before you realised, actually, Caicedo turned them down? His head was turned, as you'd mentioned, other factors coming into this. Did it then put the club in a bit of a difficult position because you're having to deal with one and try and keep your relationship strong with other clubs when you've negotiated and you've come to an agreement together in the right way, to then have to pull out of the deal and then start the discussions with another club to try and keep everybody happy?
It's difficult. It's not the ideal situation because we agreed a price with Liverpool. We agreed a transfer agreement with them. At that point, we have to hand over to the player and his agent to try and agree personal terms. When that process starts to break down, then of course we have to revert back to what's best for Brighton. And that's what we did. We were respectful to Liverpool for as long as it was viable that the player would go there. As soon as we were aware that that wasn't going to be his choice, then we had to switch our attentions and to try and get the best possible price from Chelsea as well.
Yeah. How do you make sure it doesn't damage your relationship with Liverpool, having had such successful discussions with them?
I think by being honest and open and transparent. I mean, there is only so much we can do to get that transfer completed. At the end of the day, there are 3 signatures on a contract in this country, the 2 clubs and the player as well. And from that point of view, the player does have a say in where he ultimately wants to play his football going forward. So we will be respectful to the club that's we've agreed to transfer with for as long as we can. But as soon as we're aware that that transfer isn't going to proceed, then of course we've got to turn our attentions and protect our own interests going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. At what point did you realise the deal then was like, oh gosh, this isn't going to happen here, is it? And then you have to negotiate a deal with Chelsea instead.
Well, after 48 hours of tough negotiating, it's quite demoralising to have to think you've got to do it all over again. But that's the job. And, towards the back end of last week, I think it became apparent that it almost certainly wasn't going to happen with Moyes and Liverpool. And at that point, we had to engage with Chelsea and try and agree a deal with them.
Yeah, I mean, we remember back in January, Caicedo, he refused to play because he did want a move away from the club. He wanted to play for Chelsea. Was that the right thing to do? And how did you manage that situation?
Well, we managed it by just giving him some time off, just giving him a chance to sort of go away, clear his head. And I think at that point, you are relying on the player's professionalism, obviously. You're relying on good advice, but you're also relying on us being sensible. He's a young man, he's 21 years of age. He's, facing a massive decision. And I think in that situation, as a club, we've got a responsibility to do what's right for us, but also to try and help the player as much as we can. We want young players to keep coming to us. And if we treat them well, we look after them, we try and guide them through these difficult situations, we've got more chance of that happening in the future, which is good for our club and not bad for our club, than if we just simply allow the situation to escalate out of control.
Yeah, very true. Now, how much of this huge transfer fee, £115 million, will be reinvested into the team? How do you look at that money and decide where it's going to go?
If I told you that, hey, making my job even harder going forward. But of course, we want to make sure the squad is as strong as it can be for Roberto. We've already done quite a lot of business early in this window, so we're already slightly ahead of the game. But we'll only invest that money to strengthen the squad if we're able to strengthen the squad. We're not just simply going to go out and spend the money because we've got it. And that's an important part of our model. We try and bring in players before we need them. And then when we're in a position to sell, then we're not going back out to the market with lots of money in our pocket. That's not a model that's perfect. We're not geniuses. It's not an exact science, but that's what we try and do in every transfer window. We try and get players in before we need them so that we're in a better position to sell.